Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Immutable Mindset. I'm really excited to introduce our special guest today, Michelle Abbs, who's been making a necessary and timely impact in the world of Web3 and NFTs. Having a background in teaching and leadership with Teach for America, Michelle has always been a champion of diversity and empowering the underrepresented. As a founder of Web3 Equity, she's on a mission to make the world of blockchain, cryptocurrency, and NFTs more accessible and equitable for women. Through her work at Nearpod, an education technology company, and as an executive director of Babson's College WIN, or Women Innovating Now Accelerator program, Michelle saw firsthand the challenges that women face in the tech industry, and she's dedicated her career to empowering women to become creators, investors, and builders in the world of Web3. She's in the NFT world too, y'all. In partnership with Mayor Francis Suarez and the Venture Miami team, she launched the Tuttle Tribe NFT Collection and held in-person educational events for more than 5,500 attendees, helping over 800 women purchase their first digital assets. They currently have a community of over 1,400 members on their platform. She's been featured in Forbes as a top women in NFT and named one of the top 16 most influential women in NFTs. But it's her passion for Web3 and gender equity that continues to be her driving force. So without further ado, let's welcome to the Immutable Mindset, Michelle Abbs. Welcome, Michelle.
Wow. Thank you. What an intro. That was incredible. Thank you so much.
A lot of people are saying they want Kevin to just follow them around and just be their hype man and just do a proper intro anytime they walk into a room.
Yep, you're hired.
You know,
welcome.
Real quick side tangent. Are you familiar with the YouTube show Impact Theory? Tom Bilyeu?
Yes.
I love the way he intros, and that is how I strive to do it so that I can fully represent what it is you're doing out there. And I got to. So thank you for coming, Michelle.
Well, you did that. Yeah, appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. And you have such a substantial background. And as I was mentioning before we got on, I love the way you speak on your background and experience. So let's start there. Could you tell us a little bit about your background, your background in education, and bring us forward to how Art Basel got you started in the world of Web3 and NFTs?
Yeah, well, you nailed it in that intro because, my career has not been linear. And I think, often when I see people, they're like, what are you doing now? Because I've been able to, move in and out of different industries and careers. But who I am at heart is an educator. And I started my career, teaching fifth grade. I taught fifth grade for a while with the program Teach for America. And then I joined staff at Teach for America and I led our region here in Miami-Dade. And Miami-Dade College is the fourth largest school district in the nation. And so, there's 300,000 students who attend our K-12 public schools here. So I saw firsthand what the differentiators were in schools where students were able to outperform the expectations and schools where they had lack of resources and really struggled to sort of meet those requirements. And technology was a key differentiator. So I left, the public school system and moved into this tech world through Nearpod. And in that experience, was truly part of a startup team. They were very early days when I joined. And the culture of a startup was very different than, the culture that I had been experiencing at Teach for America. And I noticed a specific difference around what it was like for me to be in the workplace versus a lot of the gentlemen who were there. So I think that passion for education then was morphed into thinking a lot about the gendered experience in tech. And so I took that passion then on to working with Babson College. They're the #1 school for entrepreneurial education. And in fact, they published this report called the Diana Study that was one of the first places to really pronounce how big of a funding gap in venture capital there was between female founders and male founding teams. So when they saw that, less than 3% of venture capital going to female founded teams, they created an accelerator program to address that. And that's what I got to run in Miami for 3 years. We helped launch and scale over 60 female founded businesses down here. So that educator ethos wove its way through that. And then I left that role and was working for a real estate developer, running his tech division and his tech community.
How'd you make that pivot going from education into real estate? I mean, that's kind of a left turn.
Yeah. So when we were holding our finale event where the founders were pitching their businesses, and we held that in one of his spaces, and he happened to come to the event. And at that time, he had purchased, I think he had only purchased around 30 buildings downtown. And now he has over 70 of them. And, he mentioned what you've created in the room tonight, bringing together founders, bringing together investors, potential clients, and just overall community. I want to do this at a neighborhood level. And so that's how I joined the team to really think about, beyond just like the physical infrastructure of the real estate, the real neighborhood and community, like some of that intangible stuff, and how do you create that? So it was, right? It was not a linear transition.
Most of us don't, especially in this Web3 world.
Yeah.
Did kind of working on that project, and I don't want to move us too forward, but did working on that project, is that what drove you to take on Art Basel and put on that event, and kind of what got you started in the world of Web3 and NFTs?
Yeah. So he's the largest private landowner in all of Miami, and there are huge events that were produced during Art Basel in his properties. And so, I was thinking about, and this is, mind you, 2021, right? So we did not have Art Basel 2020. And I had just come into the role in 2020. This was our first moment to kind of define, what does tech within this real estate umbrella, what is that going to look like? And so Art Basel felt like the moment to kind of plant the flag. And I shared with him, I think this NFT thing is not a fad. This is real. The technology behind it is revolutionary, and especially in the art world. And he took a chance on me because at that time, I think, he wasn't quite sure. And, is anyone really going to come? Are they going to care about this? And, we produced something then that, of course, was attended by over 5,000 people. So we were able to realize that vision of it, really bringing together the art and tech community and establishing that community building effort.
And what was like at that point, don't mind me jumping in, Kevin, like at that point, what was your familiarity and experience with NFTs? Have you purchased any yet? Were you just hearing about it in the ethos? Where was like your first, toe into the NFT Web3 waters?
Because this comes up so much, now I know like all the inception points on my journey. So it was actually February of 2021. I remember seeing NBA Top Shots discussed on CNBC for the first time, and then chatting with some friends. What's that?
I was thinking it was a lot of people's first touch point.
That was me too.
Yeah, that was you too. Same.
And
yeah, we were chatting on the side, like, what are these NFT things? Can someone break that down for me? So I remember that. And then I remember in July of 2021, a very good friend, Will Weinrob, who has a Web3 company. Yep. He called me and he said, hey, are you doing anything, on this topic of NFTs with the space that you all have? And I was like, all right, that's 2 data points. Like, I'm gonna learn. So no, I started listening to a bunch of podcasts, lots of Gary Vee, Googling, what is Web3? It was really in that January 2021 moment. And as I got deeper into planning for the conference, I was out with another friend, Nabil Charania, who has a Metaphor, right? They invest in buying NFTs and different digital assets. And he asked me about my NFT collection. I was like, well, I don't, I sheepishly was like, I don't have any yet. He was like, well, that's a problem. So he gifted me my first NFT. So yeah, it was really all 2021 for me. So very new.
And what was your first NFT, if you don't mind me asking?
So he gifted.
We all know our first.
I know we all know our first. He gifted me a Zed Run, but the first one that I bought was a Desperate Ape Wife.
Nice. And do you still have it?
I don't. And funny story about that. After having that, I was interviewed by Forbes, and they wanted to know all of the NFTs I had. And I think at that point I had like 5, and 2 of them were gifted to me. Right. So I send them all, here's all my digital assets, and they published them all in the Forbes article. Then I don't remember, fast forward maybe 6 months from that, I wanted some liquidity to buy something else. I was stacking up to buy something. So I sold it. And later then found a guy who DM'd me on Twitter and he was like, thanks so much for this. I bought the one, and his whole
awesome.
Twitter profile is like desperate ape wife number, whatever, as featured in Forbes. And I was like,
that is funny.
Yeah, it was really hard to find your information, Michelle, but luckily I finally found it. So thanks for that.
And then they say the rest is history.
That's
right. That's right. Well, not too hard of a pivot, but I do want to kind of touch base back on Web3 equity. So yeah, before the show and before you actually got on, me and Adam were kind of reminiscing a little bit on NFT New York, and you guys held this awesome event. I'm not sure if it was Web3 Equity or Tuttle Tribe, and I'm sure.
Yeah, it was at the Williamsburg Hotel.
Yeah, it was. I'm wearing the shirt literally that I got from that place, and I didn't even realize I was wearing
the non-fungible teacher one.
Non-fungible teachers, right? And I love the way that you broke everybody up into sections, and it was really about everybody educating everybody.
At their own level,
Everybody got to speak, and I've heard you speak about this, right? When we speak as teachers, we're able to kind of remember things a little bit better as the teachers instead of the students. So I was just really excited about that, and I loved it. But just curious, could you tell us a little bit more about the work you do with Web3 Equity and how you're working to empower women? Oh, sorry, I should bring this back. For those that don't know, Web3 Equity is an educational and onboarding Web3 company. So I'm just curious how you're working to empower women to engage in Web3 as investors, collectors, builders.
Yeah, and thank you. It's so meaningful when someone's experienced it versus me trying to have to explain it. It was awesome. Beautiful that you've been there and you've seen it in action. So yeah, as you mentioned, Web3 Equity is the parent company, right? And our mission is to ensure that Web3 is gender equitable. And we do that by educating and onboarding more women to understand what are the opportunities in Web3 and then to make a decision on how they want to engage. So we're not, set up for just buy NFTs. It's like there's different ways that you may want to engage in Web3, and we're going to put them all in front of you. And then you choose your own adventure and choose your own journey, right? The other key part to point out here is that we are purposely not called Women in Web3 or any derivative of that, because gender equity is only achieved when men and women come together around that mission. So as male allies, you both attended that event and were very welcomed because it's necessary that we all, work towards this mission together. And what we did is, with the support of the mayor and, actually mayors in New York too, saw that this education we were offering had a value. So we wanted to launch a membership token in the form of an NFT to represent that. And that's the Tuttle Tribe. So when you say, was it Web3 Equity or Tuttle Tribe? It's both, right? It's the parent company, Web3 Equity. We also do some consulting and online training and all of that. But Tuttle Tribe is the NFT that represents membership. And fun Jeopardy fact for everybody out there, Tuttle Tribe is named after Julia Tuttle. Who is? You guys know this fun fact, right? She's the mother of Miami. Miami is the only major U.S. city that was founded by a woman. So we honor her with that.
I want to jump in for a moment and just give a little bit of color into my experience with the Tuttle Tribe and Michelle. And it was really my entree into the Miami Web3 family, which I just love so much. It really is my second home. So I came down last year, one of my many trips down to Miami. I came down for Miami NFT week. And the first event we went to was at the Frost Museum. I think it was like your proper big kickoff. And my Sherpa, Chris Adamo, invited me. He's like, dude, you got to get the NFT first. I'm like, well, what is it? And we're in the car. I literally bought it on the way over there. But I said to him, I go, stop for a minute, explain this to me. And he told me the whole story about it. And for me, my Web3 journey is not just me, but it's my 10-year-old daughter. It's with my wife, who's now into it as well. So it's extremely important because all I've seen up until that point last year was very bro-y. Let's talk about the NFT bros were everywhere. And it was scary and it was not inclusive.
Still is.
And it wasn't comfortable. So these causes, these missions, whether it be Tuttle, Web3 Equity, Miss Cool Girls, Visible Women, all these allies and friends that we have in the space. So I came upstairs, and first of all, anybody that hasn't been there, the Frost Museum is incredible. We were upstairs at the top. It's like a zoo at the top. They have a stingray petting tank and everything. But what stood out to me was the incredible group that you procured of incredible change makers, men and women, and the conversations we were having. And they handed out these, this is so funny, this is before we launched our company. They handed out these little cards that we were holding in front of our face. And I got this one right here, which I'm holding in my hand. And it gives me chills because this was Kevin, this was right after, right?
I remember.
And this was
I literally remember.
Yeah.
I
So
literally
we named
remember
our
when you
company
grabbed
Probably Nothing. So I want to thank you for always being a friend to me, being open, and just being abundancy of knowledge and sharing. And that's really the ethos of what Web3 is all about. And I encourage everybody to, if they feel like they're missing something, if they feel like they're not getting something in this space, if they feel, I don't get it, go back to the education. Don't always jump to the
100%.
trend. Don't always jump to the next best thing, what everyone's talking about. Go to the heart of it. And this is what it's all about. So thank you for letting me. I'm going to get off my soapbox now.
No, but I want to say, heat praise.
That's my monologue piece. That's a new
that
segment
event
called
was
Adam's
that
monologue.
event was amazing. That event seriously was amazing, and I really kudos to you in that front. And to kind of take this now. So in terms of the Tuttle Tribe, and then NFTs, and a stat you gave us earlier about female founders getting less than 3% of venture capital annually, which is freaking crazy to me. And that's like remained the same for the last 3 or 4 years, as I understand it.
15.
I'm curious, with our ability to use NFTs as a way to kind of create venture for ourselves, how is it that you're using, or let me go back. In terms of that, do you see women starting to use NFTs and projects as a way to fund themselves whenever they're having maybe issues? And how do you see this lack of funding for female founders impacting the overall, innovation and growth of this industry?
Yeah. So I think, man, it's tough because honestly, people went after NFT projects and saw this as a bit like a capital infusion, which it is. And that only works if you have an actual business afterwards, right? I think that's where we saw this sort of hype cycle and crash after, where people said, wait, there's nothing behind this. So am I seeing people being attracted to funding vehicles that offer an opportunity for them to really catalyze a community of supporters to back a mission? Yes. What I caution though is folks to use that only as the funding mechanism, right? Because you could just do crowdfunding, right? There are other ways of going about a similar vehicle, but asking yourself, like, does this really need to be on chain? Does this align? We chose to do that simply because I had started when I launched Web3 Equity, which was right after that big conference we were talking about. People started DMing me and asking me all these questions and asking me how to buy an NFT, how to set up a digital wallet. I was teaching them how to do that with other random stuff that I would find. And I was like, well, I don't really know if this is a good collection. I don't know if I should be advising people to do this. I'll create my own NFT because I know what that's going to represent. So I was essentially teaching them how to do the thing that then I had created. That's why I chose to offer that membership token as an NFT. But I think I am seeing other projects launch, and I am seeing them think thoughtfully around, why does this need to be an NFT? And actually, when it is a token offering, and even some of I've seen a nurses DAO that popped up, for example. DAOs are really complicated, and there is such a higher level of sort of scrutiny and, employing like the different laws and how we define, what a security is through the SEC and all of that needs to go into it. I'm seeing people take their time and do it right versus let me sort of, try to be part of the hype and just rush and do it.
That's a brilliant segue in terms of taking your time, slowing down to speed up. Why is it so important that we focus on that right now, on gender equity, as we're building this foundation infrastructure of our space? We're still in the building blocks where we need these different voices, these different backgrounds, these different thinking, these different people look different. Why is this so important right now?
Can I just give you the real, you
please,
guys?
No, we want the fake answer. We want the bullshit, please.
Right?
That's what we're
I'm
here
going
for.
to give it to you real. Why do we need this right now? So that statistic of actually in 2022, it was less than 2% of venture capital went to female founding teams. Like, that is just insane to think about. But if you trace that back, right, the mechanics of venture capital was created by a group of 13, happened to be all white men, in the late 60s. So fast forward 50 years later, what do we have? we have a system that prefers men. I mean, it's
It does.
almost
Super
like
monochromatic.
you almost like can't fault it because it's like, well, yeah, I mean, if you look back to that, you understand why. So why does this matter right now? Because we can't spend decades trying to fix something. Look, we're trying and it's not really working. So we have to get it right in the beginning. And I think what worries me is we're already kind of not getting it right. Like Boston Consulting Group did a study. This was not even a month ago, of over 2,000 respondents, all folks who have built businesses in Web3, and they're already seeing a huge gender gap. So I get really worried. And then I also get worried as we're trying to grow what we're doing by some of the responses that I hear from different Web3 brands or different Web3 investors that feels short-sighted. So I don't know. I just feel like I can't hammer that point home enough, and I have to be super real about it because I am worried that it's going to continue to be the same problem.
And the more I think about this, because we see it every day in real life, and you could even look at a demographic breakdown of these conferences. I mean, Kevin was just out in Denver. We're seeing more and more. We're seeing more and more females into, but it's not enough. And it goes back to my question of why. Like, why isn't it inclusive? And is it really going back to the core, which is money, of where it all started? The funding, the root of it.
Definitely think so. I think so. And well, I'm kind of curious, Michelle, as you're thinking about how to tackle this, how do you think the world of NFT and Web3 can be made more accessible and welcoming for a broader range of creators and collectors?
Yeah, I think it's definitely capital, but you know what? This is the part that's been hard for me recently, is just remembering that as wonderful as you two are and many other, Chris Adamos and other folks out in the world, you are unfortunately not a representative sample of the whole world. And I recently saw this, I had posted a video. I found a photo online actually of like top tech leaders, and it was Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, right? You saw this. So it's a photo of all men and all white presenting men. And I did a quick little video. This was my first video to really go viral. And guess why it went viral? Because there were 300 plus comments from men saying, oh, what does this lady want? Women to found tech businesses. Oh God, can you believe it? Just understand your place is in the kitchen. I mean, the types of comments that were there are
in this day and age.
You think like, oh, we don't have that anymore. We do.
Nope.
That still exists.
Misogyny.
And yet, if you sort of weed out for that subset, but first we have to acknowledge that still exists. There are folks who are more aware, who are not as misogynistic, and yet the structures and the ways that we think about funding businesses, the ways that we demand a scale and a sort of milestone based, you must hit this metric for me to infuse more capital, that doesn't always play to the way that, I don't even know if you can slice it for gender, but to the way that things like education, things like inclusion, those types of businesses are set up, right? The scalability and the revenue generating potential is different.
Yep.
And so if we only have these very limited types of capital structures, we are not really putting the money into building the products that we need that are more education and inclusion based.
And that's totally why I think male allyship, as you're talking about, is like really more important than ever. And in all the supportive ways that you could think. What's segueing that in terms of your vision for gender equity and Web3, what could men be doing in terms of male allyship to help that?
There's two things. One is noticing the moments when gender imbalances occur. And the second is understanding how to sometimes, in a risk calculation scenario, take action. So I love to give this example. I actually started taking out male friends. Like we'd go to dinner, have a glass of whiskey, relax. I'm not judging you. This is a safe zone. And I would just ask them questions around like, do you notice these things? What comes up? And what I noticed was the times they could talk about where they saw gender imbalances, they were pretty overt. Like one time in Miami, there was this insurance company that ran a campaign with a woman in a really tight dress, tied up, and the ad said, "Save me." And they were like, yeah, that was bad, right? So they could acknowledge when gender imbalances showed up in this very overt way. And they were able to take action if there was often like a lot of applause afterwards, right? Of like, look, I held an event for all women. Yay, I'm an ally. It's like, that's where they were able to take action. No shade. We need that. And what I noticed was the places we're really going to move the needle. We need more men to notice the more nuanced moments where there's gender imbalance at play, and sometimes take action where there's risk involved. And I'll give one quick example. So a gentleman at one of these dinners shared a time when he was in a leadership team meeting, and there was only one other woman who was on the leadership team, and his boss pegged that woman to take notes. And he had just read an article or something about how, women are seen as more detail oriented and they're often asked to take notes. And he was like, if Sally takes notes during this meeting, we're not going to have her insights on the strategy and the vision. And he spoke up, right? So first thing he did was notice that a bit more nuanced, like it's not a woman whose cleavage is showing. It's like a little more nuanced. He noticed it. And then there was some risk involved for him to speak up, but he was an ally because he took action. Because if Sally would have said to her boss, "Oh, I don't want to take notes," like it would have been like, "Oh, here we go again with Sally with the gender stuff," right?
I'm only laughing because it's so terrible.
It's allyship.
And I think another actionable one too is on two sides. One, Michelle, you're a veteran of these events and speaking at panels at this point, is when you are invited to a panel, and if you're a male and you're like, "Why is there only dudes on this panel?" Right? Like stick up and say something, and maybe be open to giving up your seat for a female. If it's not something, right? Like that takes a lot of it takes balls to do, right? Like step up and give your seat away. I mean, we see these at panels, so speak up. And I really want to give folks the benefit of the doubt that it's not intentional, right? And maybe it's just a numbers game where, guess what? Right now at this point, there just might happen to be more male thought leaders, but there's plenty of female thought leaders in this space. So give them the opportunity to shine. So I think any conference organizers, they need to put it out there because that's the content that's going to get out there and be proliferated around the world.
That's right.
It's definitely not intentional because it's not at the forefront of people's brains, but that's why I think these conversations right here are so incredibly important in terms of getting that message out so that it is at the forefront of people's brains. So as we are kind of wrapping up our show, I know we have a hard stop here. I'm curious, we're talking obviously about gender equity and how to get more inclusion and bring people into this space so we could build, strong foundations where everybody's represented, hopefully. What advice do you have for women who are looking to get more involved in this Web3 space and are looking at it from the sidelines, like, whether they're, again, investors, creators, or builders?
Yeah. I mean, the advice is jump on in. And I think that's why we created what we did, because what I heard from women who are looking from the sidelines is often they feel like there's not a safe space for them to ask what they may feel are stupid questions. And like, first of all, there are no stupid questions. And I was Googling what is Web3 a year and a half ago, and here we are now talking about this. So you can ask those basic questions and you can learn at quite a quick learning curve to understand how that might impact you. And then because it is so early, there's so much green space, right? There's so much white space or uncharted territory for people to trailblaze. So if your interest is around music or fashion, or you're like, no, I'm an accountant and I really, like this sort of institutional corporate work I do, all of those sectors have pieces of Web3 that can be woven in and will be woven in decades to come. So you might as well be that early adopter who understands how that works so that you can shape the way that looks.
That is tremendous. That is absolutely tremendous advice right there.
Yes, it is. And as we are moving on to the end of our show, before we wrap up, I wanted to take a tweet of yours that I found recently and ask you a question about it, because it is a little near and dear to my heart. A little bit of a pivot point, guys.
Was it a late night tweet? Was it a rant?
It was selfish here.
What'd I write?
It's okay. Here we go. Let me tell the tweet, and then I'll get your take on it. So you said Web3 is more than just a buzzword. It's the future of the internet. It encompasses everything from blockchain to the immersive metaverse experience, revolutionizing the way we engage with companies. But what excites me the most is the decentralized trust that blockchain technology brings, opening up financial markets and opportunities for third world countries. It's going to be amazing to witness the ways Web3 shapes the world. So for this gentleman who has a family in the Dominican Republic that's just getting used to this space, why does this technology excite you for third world countries?
Yeah, I get so myopically focused in like my Miami day-to-day life that I often forget how privileged we are. Right? We have a government and we have centralized authorities that while we may be frustrated with them at some points, we don't think they're gonna bang on our door and like seize all of our assets just for writing a tweet about something that we may feel. And unfortunately, that is the case in a lot of third world countries. So we see, these unstable political structures throughout the world, where they're in day-to-day fight or flight mode, wondering if they're going to have access to the funds or to things that they have earned, and will the value of the currencies that they hold really hold the value of when they earned it. I mean, we are so privileged in our country that we don't question those things, and there is a majority of folks who live in countries who do, and I think this is already so revolutionary for them. I have a friend who's a founder of a company called Paxful, and he does a lot of work. Are you familiar with him?
That sounds so familiar. Yes.
They use. I mean, they're really focused on Bitcoin, but they're all over Africa, and the way that they are seeing this currency and the use of this currency then really empower, and like it just like unshackles entrepreneurs and folks who can create things that make an impact on their economy when you take away that lack of stability of a currency.
And the reason I asked this question, and we'll be wrapping up soon, is again, just back to the larger point of this conversation, thinking outside ourselves. We think very Western centrically, and I think we oftentimes forget exactly the points you hit on. That while everything is safe and secure with like FDIC insurance and everything here, that is not the case overseas.
Nope.
And they live by different rules, by different governments and power, and things will change for them. So I love that. I appreciate you expounding on that. So as we wrap up, I wanted to give the folks at home a little bit of the takeaways from our conversation today, and just wrap up, rehashing some of the great points of Michelle's talk. So first, I would say, don't be afraid to get involved and take risks in Web3 and NFT space. It can be an exciting and rewarding place, but it's important to do your due diligence and stay informed on the latest development and trends. 2, men specifically, be an ally and an advocate for underrepresented communities in the Web3 and NFT space. Do not be afraid to give up your seat so that women have more opportunities. 3, remember the success in Web3 and NFT space isn't about individual achievement. It's about building a community of collaborators and supporters who share your values and vision. And then lastly, don't be discouraged by setbacks or challenges. Embrace it and jump right in.
Wow.
Michelle?
It's like you do this for a living. Like, that was so perfect.
He's getting good. Look out,
that was my
Morgan's
first
getting
try at
good.
that. So thank you very much. Michelle, sincerely, I want to thank you so much for being on our show. I had an immensely informative conversation with you. Thank you for joining us. Michelle, please let the people know where to find you on your socials and about your 1-year anniversary event on March 30th.
Well, first of all, thank you both, because I've done a lot of these conversations, and it's such a different conversation when people have done their research and know you and know the project so well. Like, to have had those experiences in person. And Adam, I will never forget meeting you that first time and you telling me about your daughter. Like, it's just, this is such a wonderful, connection. So,
and we appreciate it deeply.
I hope to have more of those types of conversations, of course, at the March 30th event. So we are celebrating our 1 year. And as much as we're going to celebrate, we're like, we don't have time to celebrate. Year 2, here we go. What's the next step?
We gotta go.
So we're hosting this at a really cool venue. It's the historic hangar, which is where Pan Am would store their airplanes like back in World War II. And we're transforming this venue into an airport. So you will literally come in, have your check-in moment, get your NFT, and then you find the onboarding gate that works for you. So if you want to learn about how to create an NFT collection, you go to the onboarding gate and learn about that. If you want to learn about how to build and launch a product, you go there. So it'll be super interactive and engaging. And then, of course, we're grateful that the mayor and his wife, will be speaking and sharing some remarks. So would love for folks to come. That is called The Journey, because we're going from year 1 to year 2. We're taking off on a plane together. So hope that you all, will join us there.
Hell yeah, that sounds like an immersive experience that I think people should definitely, especially if you're curious, interested, I think you should get there if you're in Miami. And Michelle, let them know where to find you on socials.
Yeah, I'm at Michelle Abbs. And then, of course, we're at Web3 Equity on all platforms. So you can find us on YouTube. We've got a ton of videos for educational content there. TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram. It feels like Twitter. You read my tweets. We're everywhere. We'll meet in all the metaverses.
And keep an eye out for the imposters on Instagram. It's really getting out of control. I think I get every day a different Michelle Abbs fake_dot. Terrible.
There's only one, y'all, and she's
only one.
And I will never DM you about trading crypto. Never.
I mean, they give it away. Michelle, personally, I just want to thank you so much. We value you and everything that you're doing for this community. Kevin, wrap it up.
Yep. And to everyone listening at home, if you enjoyed what you heard today, please tell a friend about us. Take 30 seconds, leave a comment. It helps us immensely, and I promise I'll even answer back. I'll reply. With everybody else, I greatly appreciate you for joining us on the Immutable Mindset. Please follow us on all your social media channels at Immutable Show. Subscribe, comment, and network. Thank you for joining us, and catch us next week for more. Take care, y'all.